The church should be a place where everyone should come in, black, white, whatever color, and be comfortable to stand next, shoulder to shoulder with the next person from a different race and be able to lift our hands to worship this God that we love.
Pastor Tessie, thank you so much for your time. I'm so excited for our conversation today, and you're so busy, and your resume is just like packed, but I do want to let people know that you're a church planter and a lead pastor at Redeemed Church of God, Covenant House. Man, that's a mouthful, but that is awesome. And you started doing that since
2012.
2012. It's
yes.
been a while.
Yes.
My goodness. Not only that, you're also an associate professor of electric engineering. My goodness, at Missouri State University, where you earned a PhD, correct, in science and technology. It just blows my mind.
Well, praise God.
You know what blows my mind even more is that you're working on a second doctorate.
Well, yeah. At the Assemblies of God Theological Seminary here in Springfield. Yes.
Incredible.
Yes.
And then your mom
Yes.
of not one child, not two, 3 children.
Yes.
Do you sleep?
I do. I try to.
You try to. That's awesome. Well, people will say you're a superwoman, and I believe that. But and you are also this bi-vocational pastor by choice. Yeah. You're doing that purposefully, and there's many stories behind every called woman. You're called to be a professor. You're called to be a lead pastor. So how did God call you to this journey?
I have always loved the Lord, and I've always been kind of involved in, in just doing whatever it is that there's a need for. And I would like to say probably this is more of like a need, seeing a need and jumping in to fill that need. When I was in school, I worked really, really close with a lot of people that were planting churches, even back in Nigeria. And then coming here to the US, wherever I saw a need, I just jumped in and I tried to fill that need. And so coming to Springfield, I just saw a need where there are a lot of students who were coming from Africa as international students, and when they get here, they kind of just fall off the grid. Even though they were Christians coming into the country, they just didn't kind of fit in, and they were not able to exercise kind of like, their gifts and their talents and their call, to serve God. And that was the need I saw when I first, started to plant the church.
That is fascinating. And how did you come from Nigeria to Springfield, Missouri in the first place?
Well, so I came as an international student to Missouri S&T to study for my PhD in electrical engineering. And just about the time I was finishing, this job offer came up to be an assistant professor here at the cooperative engineering program. So I took that, and that was in 2011. So between then and about a year later, by interacting with the students and just looking at the climate of Springfield and what is obtainable, I just felt the Lord tugging at my heart to do something of this nature, to kind of start a ministry that will be targeted at reaching out to those who really are kind of falling off the grid and not really plugging into the already existing church structure that you have here in Springfield.
Wow. So nothing happens in vacuum, because you were a student already, so you understand their perspective. Absolutely. And now as a professor, and you must have been a really, really amazing student for them to just give you a job right away like that, right?
Yeah.
Well, praise God, yes. God. And so now your church, even though it's mainly African church, it is an international African church. Yes, so and in the plain people's eyes, and we don't understand, we thought African churches were just all black people coming together, right? But that's not true.
No.
Yeah, and so kind of tell us about the dynamics and DNA of your church.
Well, so it's predominantly African, like you said, but everybody is welcome. We have people who are missionaries to Africa that would come to the church, just because, they want to again experience just that flavor of African worship. But yes, we're predominantly Africans and predominantly young people. A lot of, I'd say the average age in the church is about maybe 20-something. So we have a lot of very young people. And we have, people from Rwanda, from Nigeria, from Africa, from, Ghana, from Cameroon. The thing is this, you have to think about, even in Nigeria alone, we have about 256, local languages. So if somebody from my town, meets somebody from a different town, we could couldn't converse, in the same dialect. We have to use a common language. Most of the time it's English. So if you come to the church, we have people from all of these different countries from Africa, but our worship is still in English. I preach in English every Sunday. So that's kind of like what is obtainable. But the flavor of the worship is different. We are a spirited, people when it comes to worship. It's just this exorbitant expression of expression when we are in worship, and that passion just carries on, into our worship when you see us worship. Yes.
If I wasn't a pastor, I would be attending your church.
You are more welcome.
I love it. And also as an ethnic minority myself, I'm Korean, but there's a misconception that people who don't understand the dynamics and diversity within the people group say, oh, here's a Japanese person, you're Korean, you're Asian, come talk. Yes. And I said, we don't speak the same language, right? And it's the same thing in African culture. Yeah.
Yes,
wow.
Yes,
it's a great learning lesson. Yes, so what is it like? What are some of the challenges of ministering and planning churches in one of the least diversity, Springfield, Missouri, which is increasingly diverse very slowly, but it is growing.
Absolutely. I just want to say we see from when I first moved to Springfield and now I can see the positive changes in terms of diversity. So it's not all doomed, things are changing. We have an African store now. We have Walmart now carries products that I couldn't find 7 years ago, but now I go in there and I can find it. So if you look at the culture of the community, little by little, we're getting to that point where we are making, we would like to see it go much, faster, but we have to be thankful for the progresses that we're making. You just held a huge event that brought people of different cultures together. So all of that just kind of starts to paint a picture of a community that is increasingly getting more and more diverse. But there is still that challenge, right? And that's even though we are a church that is predominantly African, I still tell those who come to church that when we get to heaven, it's not going to be an African heaven.
That's right.
It's going to be people from every tribe, from every tongue, just praising the Lord and worshiping the Lord together. So we must look at how we can intentionally reach out and see how we can have an integration between us, our culture, and the dominant culture that we have here. How can we build bridges? How can we, do things together? How can we, make this place? How can our presence be felt in this community that we are? And how can we have that integrated experience in terms of the culture?
Yeah, I think you kind of laid out really good steps. Number one, identify or recognize that there is diversity. Yes. I love your example of Walmart. I think that sounds funny, but I think it's really important. If you know the diversity of your city, go to Walmart and see what kind of items that they're selling. Yes. Yeah. That is a very good way. And number two, just start the conversation, really, right? And then just continue that thing, but also identifying the challenges. I think with that comes the identifying stereotypes. So when it comes to African churches or other ethnic minority churches, what are some of the stereotypes do you think that we need to recognize first before we move on to solving problems?
I don't know. I mean, so we all, I just believe everybody have got some kind of stereotypes there. I had, some preconceived idea of what America is like before I came here. And I believe that, that same vice versa. So I think, more and more as we interact, those stereotypes will go away and you get to know people for who they are and the culture for. So again, I think some of the, stereotypes, as a pastor, over and over I hear, and that's obtainable from the churches that we have back home. You go to church in the morning and you go back home at 4 p.m. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, is your church like that? I'm like, oh no, so some of the stereotypes. I don't want to go to an African church because it just takes so much time. Long. And I'm like, we start right there. You can see there's nothing like African time. God is an on-time God, So I believe that. And so our services will start right when we want it, when it's scheduled to start, and we have a closing time, And so we just, there's sometimes that the Holy Spirit will take, control, and we just, we're very sensitive to the move of the Spirit. But it's not like an open-ended service where you're just there, Yeah. So those are some of the stereotypes as regarding African church. But you know, really honestly speaking, it's been a wonderful experience. The people who have come in to experience, you know, the culture, I see an openness. I see just a desire, you know, to learn about the culture. I see people wanting to build bridges, and it's been wonderful to have these people come and experience the way we worship in church, you know. Yeah.
Is there anything that you would like our local ministers to know so that we can be mindful of diverse people that are coming our ways? Because no longer it's about going out to the mission field to find diversity and preach the gospel. People are coming to us, like you're in a perfect context where teaching as a professor, right? And then you meet people and you meet diverse people that are coming your way so that you can have this compassion and reach out. So how can we learn from that and reach out to the people? How can we be the better bridge to our community as local ministers, ministering to diverse people?
Have a plan for it. Plan for it. Plan that there will be people who would come into this community who are not from this community. I'll give you an example. I had a student way back in 2012. She said she went to a church. She wanted to be part of the worship team, and she loves to sing. She sang, you know, before she left Springfield at our church. But she said, I had to go through all of these hoops to be part of the worship team. I had to do a video. I had to, you know, audition. I had to, you know, and she's like, I just got tired of the process because that's not what I'm used to. And it's just, you know, she just didn't know how to package herself in a way that, you know, and then when she finally struggled and she said, nobody contacted me, you know, so she felt maybe she wasn't good enough. So I guess if we have a plan to realize that there are people coming into the community who are not at the same, you know, worship experience as those who are here, but they still want to belong. They have, you know, how do we plan to have that bridge that would connect them in? How do we make sure that nobody is falling off the bridge? So if we don't plan for diversity, we probably don't have, we don't have anything, you know, for it when we're finally face to face with the fact that yes, there are people in our community who we need to reach out to and who we need to show the love of Jesus to. And our churches, every church should be intentional about that, not just your church, my church. The church should be a place where everyone should come in, black, white, whatever color, and be comfortable to stand next, you know, shoulder to shoulder with the next person from a different race and be able to lift our hands to worship this God that we love.
That's good. Intentionality, I think, is the key, and to have the representation at the leadership level, right? When you said be prepared. How do we prepare to have representation?
People,
yeah, start with that. And I really love how having a different pipelines for different ministries. You're right. When people come from different backgrounds, that's not how they function, right? And just to do that, I also find it as a local minister, reaching out to different people groups, even home visitation looks different. Because sometimes, like, don't come to my house. Yeah. And some cultures are like, Pastor didn't visit me today.
Yes. Where have you been? Come. So
yeah, and they say, come anytime, our house is open doors.
You don't even need an invitation, just knock on the door.
Exactly. And some people say, call me and make an appointment. And this is different culture.
That's right.
Yeah, and just being prepared to do that, I think that's a great way to do it. Another thing to be prepared is to learn from each other, to start the conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, how do you start the conversation with people, diverse people in your community? How do you get to know them?
I think, just being intentional about it, being open. I think about, when Jesus would send his disciples out, they went to places they haven't been before. Yeah. And I believe that, you have to have an open mind about the fact that you're really going to, as this community gets more and more diverse, you're going to meet that person. So how, if you're intentional about it, how do I approach them? What are the right questions I need to ask? What do you think would be the need of somebody who is coming into this community? How do I build that bridge? How do I make, because a lot of times we want to just go in and grab the person and bring to church. What is the relationship that I need to build in order for me to be able to win them over into my community? Yeah. So those are the things I would be looking at.
And I'm hearing the importance of relationships rather than events.
Yes.
that is so important, especially reaching out to a diverse population who value relationships. Well, Pastor Tessie, thank you so much for your time. I have so much to learn from you, and this is a wonderful opportunity.
Same here.
Well, God bless you, and I love you.
God
we'll
bless you
continue
too.
the conversation later.
Thank you.